Isaac Asimov's books and just dreaming about a future with robots. How do we get from the robots that we have now to the future world that you see of robotics?
Yeah. Let me use language models, maybe ChatGPT, as a reference for understanding Omniverse and Cosmos. And so first of all, when ChatGPT first came out, it was extraordinary, and it has the ability to basically from your prompt generate text. However, as amazing as it was, it has the tendency to hallucinate if it goes on too long, or if it pontificates about a topic it is not informed about. It'll still do a good job generating plausible answers. It just wasn't grounded in truth. And so job generating plausible answers. So the next generation,
what's good, everybody?
It had the ability to be conditioned by context.
Everyone else is
upload your PDF. It's grounded by the PDF.
Look, we need to get this situation under control.
You could actually look up search words gets grounded. And between that, it could reason about how to produce the answer. And so the first part is the generative AI. And the second part is grounded. So now let's come into the physical world, the world model. We need a foundation model, just like we need ChatGPT have a core foundation model that was open. In order for robotics to be smart about the physical, it has to understand things like gravity, friction, inertia, spatial awareness. It has to understand an object is sitting there doing away. When I come back, it's still sitting there, permanence. It has to understand cause and effect. If I tip it, it'll fall over. And so these kind of physical common sense, if you will, has to be captured or encoded into a world foundation model, so that the AI has world common sense. Okay, and so we have to go. Somebody has to go create that, and that's what we did with Cosmos.
Roll the dice,
world
shot the dark. More like a
just like
pain in the
ChatGPT
ass.
was a language model. This is a world model. The second thing we have to go
Jack.
with PDFs and context and grounding it with structure. And so the way we augment Cosmos is with physical simulations. Because Omniverse uses physics simulation, which is based on principled solvers. The mathematics is Newtonian physics. It's the math we know. Okay, all of the fundamental laws of physics we've understood for a very long time, and it's captured into Omniverse. That's why Omniverse is a simulation. And using the simulator to ground or to condition the cosmos, we can now generate an infinite number of stories of the future grounded on these values. Just like between PDF or search plus check, generating an infinite amount of interesting things to answer a whole bunch of interesting questions. The combination of Omniverse plus Cosmos, you could do that very physically.
So, to illustrate this for the audience, if you had a robot in a factory and you wanted to make it learn every route that it could take, instead of manually going through all of those routes, which could take days and could be a lot of wear and tear on the robot, we're now able to simulate all of that digitally, practically, and in many different situations that the robot might face. It's dark, it's blocked. So the robot is now learning much more faster. Like the future might look very different than the present. Take this out. We've seen people actually interacting with this technology.
Everything that moves will be robotic someday, and almost. The idea that is already has maybe not work because it's smart, but there's no need to. And every car is going to be robotic. Human robots, the technology necessary to make it possible is just around the corner. And so everything that moves will be robotic. And they'll learn how to be a robot in Omniverse Cosmos. and will generate all these possible features. And the robots will learn from them. And then they'll exactly the same. A future where just not like robots for certain. And I'm just excited about having my own R2D2. And of course, R2D2 wouldn't quite can that it's like amount. There'll be R2D2. It'll probably be a different physical embodiment, but it's always R2. So my R2 is going to go around with me. Sometimes it's in my smart glasses, sometimes it's in my phone, sometimes it's in my PC, it's in my car. So R2 is with me all the time, including, when I get home, where I left it, this version of that version happens to be R2. So I think the idea that we'll have our own R2D2
in the chest, one on the head.
That's
Spoiler, the head's all you need.
When they talk about it, they focus on, and that makes sense. There still is a lot going on.
We should talk about what could go wrong, so we can keep it fun.
That's the approach that the shows. What are the big challenges? What fucking about this?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's possible. Bias or toxicity or just food sanction. Speaking of very toxic stuff, there's nothing about it. It's hard to rely on that. Generating, that's a version of generating fake information, fake news or fake news or of course impersonation. It does such a good job pretending to be a human. It could do an incredibly good job pretending to be a specific human. And so the spectrum of areas we have to be concerned about is fairly clear. Yeah, a lot of people have been working. There's some of the stuff we're ready to next requires attention, right? And that's simply it wants to do the right thing. It just didn't perform it right, and as a result, it's for example, a self-driving car that wants to drive nicely and drive properly, and just somehow the sensor broke down, or it didn't detect something, or to regress the turn, or whatever it is. It did it poorly. It did it wrongly. So that's a whole bunch of engineering that has to be done. Usually, is upheld by making sure the product functions. And lastly, what happens if the AI wants to do it for time, but the system, meaning the AI wanted to stop something from happening, and it turned out just when it wanted to do it, the machine broke down. And so this is no different than a flight computer inside a plane having three versions of them. And then so there's triple redundancy inside the system, inside autopilots. And then you have two pilots, and then you have air traffic control, and then you have other pilots watching out for these bad pilots. So the AI safety system has to be architected such that these AIs work function properly, don't function properly, right? And that there's sufficient safety and security systems out around them and so there's the spectrum of conversations.
Can't argue with science.
One of the incredible things about this moment that we're in right now is that we no longer have a lot of the technological limits that we had in a world of CPUs and sequential processing, and we've unlocked not only a new way
It might shock you to know I have stuff going on that doesn't involve dealing
but
with
also
your petty
a way
bullshit.
to continue to improve. Parallel processing has a
About
different
fucking
kind of
time
benefits to
someone
it
dealt
than
me a winning
the
hand.
improvements that we were able to make on CPUs. I'm curious, what are the scientific or technological limitations that we face in the current world that you're thinking a lot about?
Well, everything in the end is about how much work you can get done within the limitations of the energy. And so that's a physical limit. And the laws of physics about transporting information and transporting bits, flipping bits and transporting bits. At the end of the day, the energy it takes to do that limits what we can get done. And the amount of energy that we have limits what we can get done. We're far from having any fundamental limits that keep us from advancing. In the meantime, we seek to build better and more energy efficient computers. This little computer, the big version of it was $250,000. Yeah, it's little baby digits. Yeah, this is an AI supercomputer. The version that I delivered, this is just a prototype, so it's a mock-up. And so the very first version, this DGX1 that I delivered to OpenAI in 2016, that was $250,000. 10,000 times the very first version, this DGX1 I delivered to OpenAI in 2016, and that was $250,000, 10,000 times more power, more energy necessary than this version. And this version has 6 times more performance. I know, it's incredible. And it's only since 2016. So 8 years later, we've increased the energy efficiency of 10,000 times. And imagine if we became 10,000 times more energy efficient, or if a car was 10,000 times more energy efficient, or an electric light bulb was 10,000 times more energy efficient. Our light bulb would be right now, instead of 100 watts, 10,000 times less, producing the same illumination. So the energy efficiency of computing, particularly for AI computing that we were working on, that's incredible. And that's essential because we want to create more intelligent systems. We want to use more computation, be smarter. And so energy efficiency to do the work is our number one priority.
When I was preparing for this interview, I spoke to a lot of my engineering friends, and this is a question that they really wanted me to ask. So you're really speaking to your people here. You've shown a value of increasing accessibility and abstraction with CUDA and allowing more people to use more computing power in all kinds of other ways. As applications of technology get more specific, I'm thinking of transformers in AI, for example. For the audience, a transformer is a very popular, more recent structure of AI that's now used in a huge number of the tools that you've seen. The reason that they're popular is because transformers are structured in a way that helps them pay attention to key bits of information and give much better results. Build chips that are perfectly suited for just one kind of data. But if you do that, then you're making them less able to do other things. So as these specific structures or architectures of AI get more popular, my understanding is there's a debate between how much you place these bets on learning them into the chip or designing hardware that is very specific to a certain task. So my question is, how do you make those bets? How do you think about whether the solution is a car that could go anywhere or it's really optimizing a train to go from A to B? You're making bets with huge stakes.
You weren't using your brain anyway.
And that now comes back to exactly your question of beliefs. And the question, the core belief either one, that Transformer is the last AI algorithm, AI architecture that researcher will ever discover. That Transformers is a stepping stone towards evolutions of Transformers that are barely recognizable as a Transformer years from now. And we believe it's because you just have to go back in history and ask yourself, in the world of computer algorithms, in the world of software, in the world of engineering and innovation, has one idea and the answer is no. And so that's kind of the beauty. That's in fact the essential beauty of a computer. That it's able to do something today that no one even imagined possible 10 years ago. And if you were to turn that computer 10 years ago into a microwave, then why would the applications keep coming? And so we believe in the richness of innovation and the richness of invention, and we want to create an architecture that let inventors and innovators and software programmers and AI researchers swim in the soup and come up with some amazing ideas. Look at transformers. The fundamental characteristic of a transformer is this idea called attention mechanism. And it basically says the transformer is going to understand the meaning and the relevance of every single word with every other word. So if you have 10 words, it has to figure out the relationship across 10 of them. But if you have 100,000 words, or if your context is now as large as read a PDF, and that read a whole bunch of PDFs, and the context window is now like 1 million tokens. Processing all of it across all of it is just impossible. And so the way you solve that problem is there are all kinds of new ideas of flash attention or hierarchical attention, or all the wave attention I just read about the other day. The number of different types of attention mechanisms that have been invented since the transformer is quite extraordinary. And so I think that that's going to continue, and we believe it's going to continue, and that computer science hasn't ended, and that AI research have not all given up. We haven't given up anyhow, and that having a computer that enables the flexibility of research and innovation and new ideas is fundamentally the most important thing.
One of the things that I am just so curious about, you design the chips. There are companies that assemble the chips. There are companies that design hardware to make it possible to work at nanometer scale. When you're designing tools like this, how do you think about design in the context of what's physically possible right now to make? What are the things that you're thinking about with sort of pushing that limit today?
The way we do it is even though we have things made, like for example, our chips are made by TSMC. Even though we have them made by TSMC, we assume that we need to have the deep expertise that TSMC has. And so we have people in our company who are incredibly good at semiconductor physics, so that we have a feeling for, we have an intuition for what are the limits of what today's semiconductor physics can do. And then we work very closely with them to discover the limits, because we're trying to push the limits, and so we'll discover the limits together. We do the same thing in system engineering and cooling systems. It turns out plumbing is really important to us because of liquid cooling, and maybe fans are really important to us because of air cooling. And we're trying to design these fans in a way almost like they're aerodynamically sound, so that we could pass the highest volume of air and make the least amount of noise. So we have aerodynamics engineers in our company, and so even though we don't make them, we design them, and we have deep expertise of knowing how to have them made, and from that we try to push the limits.
One of the themes of this conversation is that you are a person who makes big bets on the future. And time again, you've been right about those bets. We've talked about GPUs, we've talked about CUDA, we've talked about bets you've made in AI.
Self-driving cars, and we're going to be right on robotics. And
this is my question.
Yeah,
what are the bets that you're making now?
The latest bet, of course, we just described at the CES, and I'm very, very proud of it, and I'm very excited about it, is the fusion of Omniverse and Cosmos, so that we have this new type of generative world generation system, this multiverse generation system. I think that's going to be profoundly important in the future of robotics and physical systems. Of course, the work that we're doing with humanoid robots, developing the tooling systems and the training systems and the human demonstration systems and all of this stuff that you've already mentioned, we're just seeing the beginnings of that work, and I think the next 5 years are going to be very interesting in the world of humanoid robotics. Of course, the work that we're doing in digital biology, so that we can understand the language of molecules and understand the language of cells, and just as we understand the language of physics and the physical world, we'd like to understand the language of the human body and understand the language of biology. And so if we can learn that, and we can predict it, then all of a sudden our ability to have a digital twin of the human is plausible. And so I'm very excited about that work. I love the work that we're doing in climate science and be able to, from weather predictions, understand and predict the high resolution regional climates, the weather patterns within a kilometer above your head, that we can somehow predict that with great accuracy. Its implications is really quite profound. And so the number of things that we're working on is really cool. You know, we're fortunate that we've created this instrument that is a time machine, and we need time machines in all of these areas that we just talked about, so that we can see the future. And if we could see the future and we can predict the future, then we have a better chance of making that future the best version of it. And that's the reason why scientists want to predict the future. That's the reason why we try to predict the future in everything that we try to design, so that we can optimize for the best version.
So if someone is watching this and maybe they came into this video knowing that NVIDIA is an incredibly important company, but not fully understanding why or how it might affect their life, and they're now hopefully better understanding a big shift that we've gone through over the last few decades in computing, this very exciting, very sort of strange moment that we're in right now where we're sort of on the precipice of so many different things. If they would like to be able to look into the future a little bit, how would you advise them to prepare or to think about this moment that they're in personally with respect to how these tools are actually going to affect them?
Well, there are several ways to reason about the future that we're creating. One way to reason about it is, suppose the work that you do continues to be important, but the effort by which you do it went from being a week long to almost instantaneous. That the effort of drudgery basically goes to zero. What is the implication of that? This is very similar to what would change if all of a sudden we had highways in this country, and that kind of happened. In the last industrial revolution, all of a sudden we have interstate highways, and when you have interstate highways, what happens? Well, suburbs start to be created, and all of a sudden, distribution of goods from east to west is no longer a concern, and all of a sudden gas stations start cropping up on highways, and fast food restaurants show up, and some motels show up because people traveling across the state, across the country, just wants to stay somewhere for a few hours or overnight, and so all of a sudden new economies and new capabilities, new economies. What would happen if video conference made it possible for us to see each other without having to travel anymore? All of a sudden, it's actually okay to work further away from home and from work, and live further away. And so you ask yourself kind of these questions. What would happen if I have a software programmer with me all the time, and whatever it is I can dream up, the software programmer could write for me. What would that do? What would happen if I just had a seed of an idea and I rough it out, and all of a sudden a prototype of a production was put in front of me, and how would that change my life, and how would that change my opportunity, and what does it free me to be able to do, and so on and so forth. And so I think that the next decade, intelligence, not for everything, but for some things, would basically become superhuman. And so I can tell you exactly what that feels like. I'm surrounded by superhuman people, super intelligence, from my perspective, because they're the best in the world at what they do, and they do what they do way better than I can do it. And And I'm surrounded by thousands of them. And yet, it never one day caused me to think all of a sudden I'm no longer necessary. It actually empowers me and gives me the confidence to go tackle more and more ambitious things. And so suppose now everybody is surrounded by these super AIs that are very good at specific things or good at some of the things. What would that make you feel? Well, it's going to empower you. It's going to make you feel confident. And I'm pretty sure you probably use ChatGPT and AI, and I feel more empowered today, more confident to learn something today. The knowledge of almost any particular field, the barriers to that understanding it has been reduced. I have a personal tutor with me all of the time, and so I think that feeling should be universal. And if there's one thing that I would encourage everybody to do, is to go get yourself an AI tutor right away. And that AI tutor could, of course, just teach you things, anything you like, help you program, help you write, help you analyze, help you think, help you reason. All of those things is going to really make you feel empowered.
The Obscurus Ultilium amulet should help locate the Sentinel artifact. Of course, finding it and claiming it are two different things entirely.
That's a little bit about each of these objects.
This is GeForce graphics card. Yep, yes. And this is the RTX 50 series. It's essentially a supercomputer that you put into your PC, and you use it for gaming, or today, design and creative arts. It has amazing AI. The real breakthrough. This is really an amazing thing.
As sure as my name's impossible for them to spy, a shiny head is like those spines at your back.
We discovered it.
Transmission emanated from the Obscurus Ultilium. I believe the amulet somehow channeled an echo from the past.
Out of
If it keeps doing that,
pixels
better
or
play
so
something
in a
useful.
4K. We're processing only 500,000. The rest of them use AI to predict. The AI guessed it. And yet the image is perfect. We informed it by 500,000 pixels.
That place has been shunned by locals for
Matrix, every
years.
single one is
Even the
all
syndicate
it's
avoids
perfect.
it.
And
Some
then we
say
tell
it
the AI,
rains blood
these
there.
are 500,000
Here's me
pixels.
without my umbrella.
What are the other 8? And it goes, fills in the rest of the screen, and it's perfect.
And if you only have to do fewer pixels, are you going to invest more in that? That fewer to use, so that the quality is better, so the extrapolation of the life.
Exactly. Because
Down.
whatever
Nothing
computing,
good
whatever
is ever
attention
down.
you have,
Yeah.
whatever resources you have, you can place it into 5,000. This is a perfect example of why
Catacombs? So
AI is
can
going
you.
to make us super. Because all the other things that it can do, it'll do for us, that allows us to give our time and energy and focus.
Trust you, Box.
They're really, really valuable.
I haven't trusted anything since right
And
now.
so we'll take our own resource, which is
I've gone from fuck this shit to
energy
cautiously
intensive,
optimistic.
attention intensive. We'll dedicate it to the few 100,000 pixels. Super amazing. And so this graphics card is now how most the computer graphics inside. And the next one, as I mentioned earlier, in 2016 I built the first one for that research. And Elon was there to receive it. And this version, I built a mini version. And the reason for that is because AI has now gone from AI researchers to every engineer, every student, every AI scientist. And AI is going to be everywhere. And so instead of these $250,000 versions, we're going to make these $3,000 versions. And schools can have them, students can have them. You just set it next to your PC or Mac, and suddenly you have your own AI suite. Build your own R2D2.
What fifth circle set did you pull out of that?
example, if I were a student, the first thing I would do is, how do I learn to how do I learn to these learning how to interact with AI is not unlike being someone who's really good at asking questions. You're incredibly good at asking questions, and prompting AI is really very simple. You can't just randomly ask questions. And so asking requires some expertise and artistry. So if I were a student today, irrespective of math, or science, or chemistry, or biology, it doesn't matter.
Oh, good! Going batshit in prison didn't affect my aim.
I ask myself, how can I use AI to do my job better? Doctors may use AI to do their doctor. That question should be persistent constantly. And just as my generation grew up as the first generation that has to ask ourselves, how can we just do our jobs better? The generation before us had computers. My generation was the first generation that had to ask the question, how do I use computers to do my job better? Remember, I came into the industry before Windows 95. In 1991,
Must have been a pain in the ass getting
and
in
after
here
that,
without the
shortly after that, computers started to emerge. And so we have to ask ourselves, how do we use computers to do our jobs better? The next generation doesn't have to ask that question. It has to ask, obviously, the next question, how do we use computers? That is start.
It's a really exciting, very competitive work.
That's right. I think it's fun. AI is obviously more just it's just and so there is no chance that they'll learn that.
Let's paint the town red. The bloodier the
There's
better.
no chance. Somebody really has to show it to you. And yet, with ChatGPT, if you don't know how to use it, all you have to do is type in, I don't know how to use ChatGPT.
That tops the list of most traumatizing shit I've seen today. Why use bug spray and hot lead with it? Sending Molotov.
It's not something that I meant to ask you, but on the way here, a little bit of brain study. And from here, very bumpy. I'm sitting there, and it's
Get ready for a shocking revelation, fuck faces.
I was thinking about what they're going to say at my funeral. And after...
She asked a question. That's what the tombstone is missing.
I hope so. And after I loved my husband and my friends and my family, the thing that I hoped that they would talk about was optimism. I hope that they would recognize what I'm talking about. And I'm very curious for you. You've been doing this a long time. It feels like there's so much that you've described in this vision ahead. What would the theme be that you would want people to say about what you're trying to do?
Very simply. This is important use a long time ago. Sticking was hard to use. We found ourselves today being one of the many most important and consequential technology companies.
There are growing fears of a major global trade war tonight after President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico and China starting tomorrow. And he added that very substantial tariffs would follow for the European Union. Goods exported from Canada and Mexico to the US will be hit with a 25% tariff, products from China with 10%. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his country would face difficult times as a result, but promised a forceful retaliation. From Washington is our North America editor, Sarah Smith. He had promised to introduce tough tariffs on day one. President Trump's obviously a couple of weeks late, but clearly excited about one of his favourite policy tools.
I always say tariffs is the most beautiful
Population. Less than
tariffs are
yesterday.
going to make us rich as hell. It's going to bring our
Never been so
country's
glad to see backup around.
businesses
Hell,
back.
lucky I'm still in one piece.
President Trump wants both Mexico and
I need
Canada
you to look for
to
survivors.
stop migrants
Subdue any
crossing
threats.
their borders
Help
into
me save this
America.
town. Copy.
Instead of illegal drugs, including fentanyl, is flooding into the US.
The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country.
Hundreds of billions of dollars worth of trucks from Mexico and Canada into America and the other way around. They are each other's biggest trading partners by far. 90% of the avocados sold in America come from Mexico. Charging a 25% tax on each fruit that crosses the border will hurt Mexican exporters, but it also risks increasing prices for American consumers. Canada's biggest export to America is oil. Even 10% import tariffs risk raising costs for Americans. And of course, Canada will also feel the pain if America buys less of their oil. The Prime Minister says he's ready to respond. The President does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, he's ready for response. A purposeful, forceful, but reasonable, immediate response. 10% tariffs will be charged on electronic and other goods that are shipped to America from China. Donald Trump says he was trying to stop fentanyl being exported to America, but of course it doesn't hurt to also punish one of your biggest global competitors. Donald Trump firmly believes he is the world's best negotiator and appears confident that
At 8:47 p.m., an Army Black Hawk helicopter collided with a regional jet in the nation's capital. The crash occurred over the Potomac River near Reagan National Airport, killing 67 people. It's one of the most restricted airspaces in the country.